This deck is amazing. You know what's even more amazing? 3 copies of this deck. That's right, in today's video I'm going to show you my deck list for 3 copies of the structure deck Beware of Traptrix. If you have 1 copy of this deck already, then I highly recommend that you get 2 more because this deck is really good, but it doesn't work so well if you only have 1 copy. It can work, all the combos still function, but it's much better to have 3 of them, especially to get all of your starter cards. So, let's get right into this deck list. First of all, we have, of course, 3 copies of Traptrix Mermoleo. Traptrix Mermoleo is the main starter card of the deck, so you definitely want to see her in your opening hand. Next, we have 3 copies of Traptrix Mantis. For the same reason, Mantis is one of the main starters of the deck, mainly to search Mermoleo, so you definitely want to see her in your first hand if you don't get Mermoleo instead. And finally, for our starters, we have 3 copies of Traptrix Pudika. Pudika adds our field spell. You definitely want to have 3 of her. She is another starter, so this deck actually has 9 starter cards. They're basically all you need in your starter hand to get your combos going, get your flow going, get all your trap hole cards out, and just really dominate the game. So you definitely want to see each one of these free cards, at least one of them, in your starter hand, so run all of them at 3. Next up, we have 2 copies of Traptrix Dionea. Traptrix Dionea is a great card to go into. It's one of the main cards that I would normally go into with my Traptrix deck, with the main combo of the deck, where Dionea is who I would normally go into off of the effect of Traptrix Serra. So Traptrix Dionea, she allows you, when she's normal summoned, to special summon a Traptrix from the graveyard. This makes her a fairly decent extender monster, especially in Game 2, just to get more, sorry, not Game 2, in Turn 2, just to get more Traptrix monsters on the field, which you can then use for a Link Summon or Xyz Summon. She does work in Turn 1 if you manage to get a Traptrix in the graveyard, but that's a very big if, so, but you can work with the field spell, which gives you a second normal summon. But the main reason we have her is for her second effect, so for getting our resources from the graveyard and setting up more trap holes on the field. She makes a great card to go into with the effect of Serra, especially after discarding a hole with the effect of Holueta, which we'll go over soon. Next up, we have 1 copy of Traptrix Arachnocampa. Some decks will be running 2 copies of Arachnocampa, and Arachnocampa is great. Arachnocampa is a very good extender. She can be special summoned just by having a Traptrix monster on your field, which is fantastic. The only reason that I only run 1 of her is because we don't really need an extender with this deck. Just because we only have, this is just using just the structure deck, we only have just the Traptrix monsters, the main Traptrix extra deck monsters, so going into another one of them isn't really that necessary. But if you have access to different Link monsters, different Xyz monsters that you can go into, then I probably would swap out one of the other cards for an extra copy of Arachnocampa, maybe swapping out a Dionea or one of the other Traptrix monsters for Arachnocampa, just because she is a great extender, and you do want to see her in your hand, especially if you're going for other Link summons, other Xyz summons and stuff like that. But just for this deck, when you're only running the structure deck, 1 copy of Arachnocampa is definitely enough for that. She also has the added benefit of protecting cards in your spell and trap card zone. Next up, we have 1 copy of Traptrix Nepenthes. Nepenthes isn't that fantastic now that we have Traptrix Serra, but she can be a fairly decent opening card. Opening with Nepenthes isn't a bad thing, but you really won't do that very often. Like, it's very likely that you'll start with Mermoleo, Mantis, or Pudika, which is a much better starter card. Much better starter cards, but Traptrix Nepenthes is a decent enough starter and can help you out in a pinch. Lastly, for our Traptrix monsters, we have 1 copy of Traptrix Vesiculo. Vesiculo is, again, another reasonably decent extender. She's not as good as Arachnocampa, but it is good just to have her in there, and I wanted the extra, just a couple more names in the deck as well. With Vesiculo's other effect, you can banish her. What do you do? If you control no spell or traps in the graveyard, you can banish her from the graveyard and then set a whole normal trap from your graveyard to your field. So this is a good card to have in the graveyard just for that effect, and just to get more traps on your field from your graveyard and recycle the ones that are in your graveyard. It may not be as good as Dionea, but it has different uses. She's good in the graveyard, whereas Dionea you want to be able to special summon. So I like to have 1 copy of Vesiculo, but if you wanted, you could swap her out for Arachnocampa, or even just anything else really, but yeah. To finish off our monsters, we of course have 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring for the extra disruption, delicious Ash Blossom disruption, and 1 copy of Artifact Morotark, same reason, more disruption, more destruction, but you only really want to run 1 copy of them because seeing him in your hand is not ideal. Ideally we want to summon him with the effect of Artifact Sanctum rather than with his own effect. Now for our spells. We don't have many spells in this deck. I didn't bother with Raigeki and Feather Duster because they're not really needed. In order to get rid of spells and traps, we have Murmileo, who can do that every turn. It's very easy to spring off Murmileo's effect every turn, so having Harvey's Feather Duster isn't that necessary. And of course we run a crap ton of Trap Hole cards as well as Morotark, who does a perfectly good job of getting rid of the monsters. So Raigeki and Feather Duster aren't really needed. You can put them in if you wanted, but I would rather just fill up the deck with better cards, more things that we can use, things that we can search for as well. So we have 2 copies of Traptrix Garden. Traptrix Garden is a great card for extending our plays. This card is actually really good and basically helps Traptrix with everything that they're missing. The main effect that we want is of course that you get to extra normal summon a Traptrix monster in addition to your normal summon or set each turn. So doing that is just always a fantastic thing, and it helps you to extend your plays, and for some of the plays it's definitely very useful to have that extra normal summon, just so that you're able to actually do anything really. That is of course why we have 3 copies of Pudika to search our Traptrix Garden, and that's what makes Pudika such a good starter card, is that she searches for Traptrix Garden and then allows us to summon another monster. Next up we have 2 copies of Trap Tantalizing Tune. Trap Tantalizing Tune is not a bad card, but it's also not a great card. The reason it's not a great card is because Traptrix are very adept at searching cards from the deck. And Trap Tantalizing Tune lets you draw 2 cards at the cost of one of your cards in your hand. So this is a net 0 card. It can be good later on in the game, especially for extended games, just to get more trap holes in your hand. Once you run out of cards in your hand from setting everything, playing all your Traptrix, Trap Tantalizing Tune can be useful for getting more, but for the most part we're just going to be searching cards. We're not really worried about drawing into them. It can also be good as an opening hand, like if you don't have one of your starters in hand, but you do have Trap Tantalizing Tune, which does happen on occasion. Normally, if you don't have a starter, you'll probably have Trap Tantalizing Tune as your starter, so you can use that to just draw 2 more cards and hopefully get your starter monster. But otherwise, Trap Tantalizing Tune isn't the most useful. I do like having it in just because it is a draw 2 card, and that's never a bad thing. And it also has the secondary effect that you can banish this card from the graveyard to target one of your banished level 4 insect or plant monsters or normal traps and place it on the bottom of the deck, which again, it's good for recycling. It's good for getting more cards to your hand and then just recycling them after they're banished, which isn't a bad thing. There are a few cards that banish your Traptrix and your whole cards, so Trap Tantalizing 2, not a bad card. Only run it at 2 though. I originally had it at 3, but it wasn't that useful. Finally, for our traps, the most important part of the deck, we have 3 copies of Traptrix Holutea. Holutea is phenomenal. This card is one of the best cards, one of the best introductions that have come in the Traptrix structure deck. Holutea is a really great trap monster. The reason it's good is because it allows you to use Sarah's effect on your first turn, because Traptrix Holueta, you can activate it by discarding a normal trap. I would say that this card is better than Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine, because it allows you to get a trap in your graveyard, and it also has the secondary effect that you can banish it from your graveyard to special summon a Traptrix monster from your graveyard. Again, recycling your Traptrix, this allows you to go into Murmileo for its destruction effect, or Dianea to reset another trap. Also, the discard to activate Holueta also makes Dianea live to continue our plays with Traptrix Sarah. So I run 3 copies of Holueta. You definitely want 3 of them. You absolutely do not want any less than 3 of them, because you always want to be able to see this card at some point in the game on your first turn, either by adding it with the effect of Murmileo or just by drawing it. Either way works. You definitely just want to see this card. It may even be beneficial to run 3 Holuetas as well as running Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine if you just have trouble getting into them for some reason, but just Holueta on its own should be more than enough. I've never had any problem with that. Next up, we go into our Trap Hole cards. We have Bottomless Trap Hole, 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole, and 2 copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. These 3 are our best Trap Hole cards. main ones you want to go into are Floodgate Trap Hole and Gravedigger's Trap Hole, most likely. And then we have 2 copies of Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, which is also a great card to just negate effects. So these are the best Trap Hole cards, I think, personally, at least the best ones that come with the structure deck. So I run 2 copies of them. The reason I run 2 copies of them is so we can search with our Traptrix. Next up we have 1 copy of Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare. This is just sort of a different version of Bottomless. It's not quite as good as Bottomless, but it has other uses. So the reason I don't run 3 Bottomless and I run 1 of this card instead is because this card has other uses. It can be used in a different way to Bottomless. It activates if your opponent has special summoned a monster this turn, so it doesn't necessarily need to activate when they special summon the monster. That's what makes Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare a little bit different, a little bit better. So yeah, it makes it a little bit different, a little bit better in certain situations, but otherwise Bottomless Trap Hole is usually the better option. Next up we have Void Trap Hole. Again, this card is a little less useful because it only targets monsters with 2000 or more attack, but it does negate the effect and then destroys it, and it also doesn't actually target. I take that back. So Void Trap Hole is pretty good, but just not as good as some of the other options. Like Floodgate Trap Hole does pretty much the same thing but on anything, and is just really good in general. But Void Trap Hole, again, is good for those situations where your opponent does special summon a monster with 2000 or more attack and you need to negate its effects. That's all for the Trap Hole cards. Next up, for the last of our traps, we have 1 copy of Traptrix. Traptrix isn't a fantastic card in a Traptrix deck, ironically, just because we have so many ways to search out our traps, but I do like to run 1 copy of them because it helps us to search for the next cards in our deck, that being 2 copies of Evenly Matched and 2 copies of Artifact Sanctum. These cards can't be searched by any Traptrix cards because they're not whole normal traps, so having that Traptrix just helps to get those out, and it can also help to get any of our trap holes out, just whatever you need at the time. Just keep in mind that when you activate Traptrix, you won't be, like, say your opponent summons a monster and you want to bottomless it, if you activate Traptrix in response, it will then set your bottomless and you won't be able to activate the bottomless from there. So just keep that in mind, that you will need to do that before they summon, but mainly we want to use Traptrix to get Artifact Sanctum and Evenly Matched if you're going into, well, if you need Evenly Matched. You probably won't need Evenly Matched on your second turn, but yeah, you really do want to search for Artifact Sanctum. Gives us a very powerful monster for the OTK on turn 2, and also allows us to destroy a card by summoning more attack. So that's the reason for Artifact Sanctum. We do run 2 copies of Evenly Matched, because of course Evenly Matched is a fantastic card. Traptrix is very much a going first deck. If you're not going first, then there's not a whole lot that Traptrix can do except for Evenly Matched. That's where Evenly Matched comes in. However, you don't really want to see it if you're going first, so that's why we only run 2 copies. You know, you're in a tournament, you think you're going to go for game 2, you think you're going to go second in game 2 that your opponent's going to take first. That's why we have a 3rd copy of Evenly Matched in the side deck. So if you're going into game 2 in a tournament and you're probably going to go second, then definitely side deck in another copy of Evenly Matched, because you really do want to see this if you're going second. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot you can do. Traptrix is a control deck. It's all about stopping your opponent's summons and their effects when they're summoned. So, you know, if they've already done all their summoning, then Traptrix can't do a whole lot after that. So having 3 copies of Evenly Matched for game 2 is definitely very useful. Speaking of the side deck, let's take a quick look at the side deck. We have 1 copy of Gadaula, the Mystery Dust Kaiju, 2 copies of Humongous, the Sticky String Kaiju. These Kaijus are great for certain decks that you just can't trap hole, things that you can't get rid of, cards that can't be destroyed or targeted, for example. You do have trap holes that can take care of those, but Kaijus are always a great option. We have 1 copy of Traptrix Attrax, just in case your opponent does a lot of spell and trap destruction. Attrax can be useful. It can be a good tech card against certain cards like that, certain decks that just destroy a lot of cards, a lot of your spell and trap cards. 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster if your opponent runs a lot of spell and trap cards and you really want to get rid of them. 1 copy of Raigeki if your opponent runs a lot of monsters and you want to get rid of them. 1 copy of Bottomless, an extra Bottomless. It's one of the better trap holes if your opponent summons a lot of 1500 or more attack point monsters and you need a Bottomless. If you go into game 1 and find that you needed another Bottomless, put another Bottomless. 1 copy of Evenly Matched. If you're going into game 2, you lost game, or you won game 1, and your opponent's going to make you go second, you definitely want to have that 3rd Evenly Matched in your deck. You absolutely want to see that in your first hand. 1 extra copy of Floodgate Trap Hole, again it's one of the better trap holes, same with Gravedigger's Trap Hole, 2 copies of Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare. Just for certain decks where this situation would come up a lot, you want to side in a 1 or 2 more copies of Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare. It probably won't come up, but just in case. Same for a Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare. This is again one of the better trap hole cards, so if you want to side in a third for decks that it works really well against, then go ahead. And finally, Void Trap Hole, again, same reason as Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare. If you need it, if you need more of them, put in a couple more. Alright, finally for our extra deck, we only have access to the Traptrix extra deck monsters, so we want 3 copies of Traptrix Senkara. Senkara is the main extra deck monster, it is the most powerful one, so you definitely want 3 copies of her. Same with Traptrix Rafflesia. I was going to say Menhei Rafflesia for a second there, go watch that series. 3 copies of Traptrix Rafflesia. Rafflesia again is one of the main monsters we go into. We go into Senkara and then we go into Rafflesia, both of these on the first turn. That's what you want to see, so we have 3 copies of them. 3 copies of Traptrix Allomeris. Allomeris is a good extender, a good card to go into just to recycle our Traptrix monsters, and then we have 2 of the others. We have 2 copies of Pinguicula, probably, I would say, not the best one. She is a good extender, but you probably won't use her very often. Traptrix Adipus, however, you definitely will be using in your turn 2. Adipus sets us up for our OTK and is a really fantastic card, is exactly what the Traptrix are missing just to finish off. With Traptrix Adipus, it is very likely that you'll be able to go into an OTK on your second turn, which is really just fantastic just for her 1000 extra attack effect. And finally, 2 copies of Traptrix Cularia. Cularia is much better for a longer game. She's good at recycling your Dionea to recycle your other trap hole cards. And just for resetting your trap holes. Again, just for long games, she helps you stay on board and keep control of the field. Alright, now real quick, I will just show you one test hand just to wrap this video up. But in the meantime, if you like this video, then do please leave a like, comment down below, let me know any of your questions, and of course, I highly recommend that you watch my How to Play Traptrix video. That's a video I posted last week. It will definitely help you to run this deck. It will explain everything that you need to know about the Traptrix deck, everything, how to run it, how to play it, and then in a couple days, I'll be uploading my Traptrix combos video, which will go over the main combos for the Traptrix deck, and again, teach you everything else that you need to know on how exactly to run Traptrix, what to do with your opening hand. Wow, this is a little embarrassing. Alright, so this is a very typical opening hand that we'll see. 1 copy of Murmileo and maybe another starter like Mantis. So I just want to show off the Murmileo combo for right now, so glad we've got her. We'll ignore all the parts that were cut out. So what we're going to do here is we're going to normal summon Traptrix Murmileo. Now since we don't have Traptrix Holueta, we're going to add Holueta to the hand. If we do have Traptrix Holueta in the hand already, then we would add another Traptrix instead, but I'm just going to go ahead and add Holueta. Next we want to use Murmileo to link summon our Traptrix Senkara. Again, this is the main monster that we're going to be going into with this deck, is Senkara. Then we're going to set our Holueta, and now we can activate at the turn it's set by discarding a normal trap. So what we're going to do is discard our Trap Hole card that's in our hand, then activate Holueta, who then gets special summoned as a monster. Now that we've activated a normal trap card, we can use the effect of Traptrix Senkara to special summon a Traptrix monster from the deck with a different name from the cards we control. So now we're going to special summon our Traptrix Dionea. Dionea gets special summoned to the field, and her effect will set a trap hole card from our graveyard, so that'll bring back the card that we just discarded, setting that onto the field. And now of course we have 2 level 4 monsters on the field, so we can overlay these guys and then go into Traptrix Rafflesia. This is the main inboard that you want with this deck, a copy of Senkara and a copy of Rafflesia. And also, sorry, I forgot, Dionea's effect was just activated, so Senkara's other effect will activate, allowing us to set a trap hole card from our deck. We'll go for a Floodgate Trap Hole, is a good card to use. And by the way, this is our 5th summon for the turn, so we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But since our 5th summon is Rafflesia, if our opponent were to use Nibiru on us, what we can do is simply detach one of our materials with Rafflesia's effect and activate Gravedigger's Trap Hole, activate the effect of it by sending it straight to the graveyard. This will negate the effect of Nibiru and you still get to keep your field, which is really great. And then of course we're going to set our Traptrix and our Artifact Sanctum. Artifact Sanctum, we can spring at any time when our opponent has a face-up card just to special summon our artifact and get rid of that card. Traptrix we can use to get any of our trap hole cards as well as our evenly matched in some sort of weird emergency where we need evenly matched on our turn 2. And then of course we've got Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare set and Floodgate Trap Hole, and then we have Raflasia's effect on our opponent's turn. We can detach one to use the effect of any trap hole in our deck by sending it to the graveyard, which is just fantastic. That just covers everything, really. That covers anything that our opponent will do if they activate a card effect, if they activate a monster effect, sorry, if they activate an effect from the hand, if they summon a monster. We just get rid of everything, we just stop everything, and then when her effect goes off, of course, Sarah's effect will go off, allowing us to set a normal trap, and when we activate a normal trap, Sarah's other effect will allow us to special summon another Traptrix, which is great. Traptrix that we might want to go into during our opponent's turn. So let's say our opponent does something and we use Floodgate Trap Hole. Now we use Traptrix Sarah's effect. So we've got a few options we can go into. We've got Traptrix Pudica is a great choice for, she will allow us to banish a special summon monster your opponent controls, which is great. You may want to go into Traptrix Mantis for her effect to return a trap hole to your hand and set it. This will reset the trap that was set by Dionea, meaning it won't get special summoned. Another option you can go into is, of course, Traptrix Murmaleo, who will then destroy a spell or trap your opponent controls. These three are the best choices. You may want to go into Dionea for the extra trap hole from the graveyard, but it's probably not necessary. I would mainly go for Pudica and Murmaleo to take care of spell or traps or your opponent's special summon monsters. Either way is fine. So there you have it. That is the basics. That is the 3 times structure deck. Beware of Traptrix. Again, if you like this video, please leave a like and a share and let me know what you thought in the comments. Let me know if you run it a little bit differently. You know, it of course depends on how good your luck is, how good your heart of the cards is. You know, what cards you want to see more, what cards you don't want to see more, and of course, what you're going up against in your locals. If you have any questions, do let me know. Traptrix is a control deck, so it is really all about knowing what your opponent's deck is. So if you have any questions about that, if you know like what sort of decks you're going to go up against, then do let me know. And of course, subscribe, stay tuned for the next video in which I go over the Traptrix combos. Thank you very much for watching. My name has been Senkara, and until next time, see ya.